Imagine a nation crippled by addiction, where over 2 million souls are hopelessly ensnared by narcotics. It's not a world far off from our own today. Welcome, my dear listeners, to the China of the 19th century, a landscape gripped by the iron hand of opium. This was not a self-inflicted wound, but one imposed from afar by the British East India Company, a corporation with an insatiable hunger for profit. Opium, this insidious, poppy derivative, was the dark heart of a lucrative trade, and it was being imported into China in staggering quantities. Picture a river of this potent drug flowing from the poppy fields of India through the hands of British merchants and into the veins of an ever-growing number of Chinese addicts. The profits were astronomical, and the human cost was devastating. In the midst of this crisis stood the Chinese emperor, a man desperate to save his people from the clutches of addiction. In the year 1839, he launched a fierce anti-drug campaign, a bold attempt to stem the tide of opium flooding his nation. But his enemy was not merely the drug itself, but also the mighty British Empire, which had grown fat on the spoils of the opium trade. The emperor's efforts were valiant, his intentions noble. He ordered the destruction of opium stocks, banned the drug outright, and began to punish those who dared to defy his command. But he was fighting an uphill battle against a foe with deep pockets and an unwavering commitment to protect their golden goose. The year marked the beginning of a brutal conflict known as the First Opium War. China, armed with antiquated defenses and a fierce determination to protect its people, found itself pitted against the military might of the British Empire. But this was not a fight of equals. Britain, armed with superior technology and an insatiable thirst for profits, was a formidable adversary. Imagine if you were a giant in a playground bullying a child. That was the scenario that unfolded. Britain's technologically advanced warships and guns quickly and mercilessly bombarded China's outdated defenses. The Chinese fought valiantly, but they were simply outmatched. What followed was nothing short of a catastrophe for the Middle Kingdom. The British Empire, drunk on the sweet nectar of victory, demanded more than just an end to the conflict. It demanded payment. The price? Hong Kong. That vibrant, bustling metropolis that we know today was ceded to Britain as one of the spoils of war. But the British appetite for expansion was not sated with the acquisition of Hong Kong. More ports were forced open, creating new avenues for British trade. This was not just a victory for the British Empire. It was a humiliating defeat for China. The First Opium War was a lesson in power dynamics. It showed the world what happens when one country's superior technology meets another's desperate need for self-preservation. It was a dance of destruction that left China in ruins and the British Empire bloated with pride and profits. But the British Empire's victory came at a cost. It exposed a vulnerability in China, a crack in its armor that others would soon seek to exploit. You see, the First Opium War did not just cripple China, it also primed the appetite of other foreign powers. The worst, as they say, was yet to come. Round 2 of this devastating conflict exploded in 1856, with France joining Britain in a frenzy of exploitation. The stakes were higher, the tension thicker, and the brutality more pronounced. The second act of this tragic drama, known as the Second Opium War, was about to begin. Just when China was beginning to lick its wounds from the First War, the second one came knocking on its door. This time, the French joined the British in their quest for domination, whipped up into a fervor of imperialistic ambition. Together, they formed a formidable alliance, an ominous storm cloud looming over China's already darkened horizon. The spark that ignited this new war was a seemingly insignificant incident involving the seizure of a British-flagged ship by the Chinese authorities. But as often happens in history, small sparks can lead to raging fires. The British used this incident as a pretext to demand more concessions from China, and when these demands were not met, the cannons roared once again. China once again was no match for the technologically superior forces of the British and the French. The war was a one-sided affair, with China suffering heavy losses and ultimately succumbing to the onslaught. The result? More humiliating treatises, including the infamous Treaty of Tianjin in 1858, which granted foreigners unrestricted access to China. This effectively opened up the heart of China to foreign exploitation, a wound from which the country would take a long time to recover. The war left a trail of destruction in its wake. Cities were plundered, cultural treasures looted, and countless lives lost. But perhaps the most profound impact was on China's economy, government authority, and national pride. The Middle Kingdom, once a beacon of civilization, was quickly brought to its knees. Out of the ashes of the old, a new China would rise, one that was determined to regain its strength and restore its lost glory. In the aftermath of the Opium Wars, a toxic blend of military force, drug pushing, and extortion became Britain's playbook for colonizing Asia. The British Empire, emboldened by their victories, took it upon themselves to spread their influence far and wide across the Asian continent. They used their superior military technology to subdue any opposition, and the opium trade continued to flourish under their watchful eye. But let's pause for a moment and take a look at the other side of the coin. Despite the devastation, the Opium Wars served as a loud wake-up call for China. The nation was caught off guard, its once mighty empire brought down. It was a bitter pill to swallow, but it sparked a burning desire to modernize and regain strength. China's leaders recognized they could no longer rely on the old ways. They had to adapt to survive, and so they started on a journey of technological and societal improvement. Their efforts were not in vain. Slowly but surely they began to see results. Taking to modernizing their military, strengthening their economy, and reforming their government. It was a long and arduous process, but it was necessary. China was no longer the helpless victim it once was. It was rising from the ashes, stronger and more determined than ever before, but the road to recovery was not without its obstacles. The scars of the Opium Wars ran deep, and the memory of their humiliation still lingered. The Opium Wars gave birth to a dangerous concept known as extraterritoriality. This was a rule where foreigners living in a country are governed not by the laws of their host nation, but by the laws of their home country. It was a lot like modern diplomatic immunity, but these were no political entities. Doesn't sound fair, does it? This concept was imposed on China following the Opium Wars. The foreign merchants and diplomats, mostly from Britain and France, now had unrestricted access to China. This meant that they could act with a degree of impunity, protected from the consequences of their actions by the shield of their governments. But the reach of extraterritoriality didn't stop at China's borders. No, it was imposed across all colonies as well. This infringement on national sovereignty was a tool of empire, a means of control, and a way to protect foreign nationals from the laws and customs of the lands they were exploiting. It led to a gross imbalance of power, enabling foreign abuses and contributing to the erosion of local cultures and systems of governance. It created a world where the rules were different depending on who you were and where you came from. The Opium Wars left an indelible mark on history, shaping the world as we know it today. The outcome was catastrophic for China, with the loss of Hong Kong and the forced opening of further ports to quench Britain's insatiable thirst for new markets. As we look back on these pivotal events, we are reminded of the complex and often brutal dance of power and greed.